So today I'm going to work on doing some batches of body fill and just smoothing out some of these plug welds, and I also have to work on some of these seams. I'm going to put just a coating of fill just to kind of cover the seam and smooth it out. I talked about that in the last video, so I'm going to work on that a bit today. And then the next thing I got to deal with is getting that hub mounted on the hood for the spare tire. So that's another project that's coming up. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got the body fill in there and it's all sanded down, so it's a nice smooth edge. You particularly notice it up on the top here. I think I have to sand it just a bit more, but that should make for a better finish. Just a bit of an update. I kind of went ahead and did some work. I didn't actually pull out the camera, but that's the neck for the fuel tank filler. I went ahead and just did that. I should have referenced the photographs that I have more closely, but I kind of just went by memory. But ends up that it's an actual cone, but it just comes straight up following the angle of the actual hood. So the neck itself is on an angle, and I designed mine to be kind of straight up and down. So I don't know if I'm going to come back to that and remake it. This cone was quite tricky to get the pattern right. And you see there's a flared edge down here that's going to give me a surface to weld onto, and then there's an edge up here, and then I'll make a cap that goes over top of it. What ended up happening is I have to make this larger than the original. Best I can figure, the original is like 4.25 inches at the top, maybe 5, a little bit wider at the bottom. This is quite a bit larger, but I have to be able to reach in and get the cap off. So to do that easily, it kind of requires a larger opening. So the proportions aren't right to begin with, but you get the idea. So I'm gonna sit on this and just see how I like it. I'm not gonna weld it until the very last, until I know what I'm gonna do. Worst case, I just make another one. I know in my last video I said I was going to get to this hub, but I've kind of skipped past that. I wasn't really interested in doing it. There's so much to work on, I can kind of just pick and choose, what interests me. I ended up working on these hinges for the window frame, for the windshield. This is what I came up with. It's not a perfect copy, but I think it'll replicate the function at the very least, and the basic look. The original, best I can tell, for whatever reason, it kind of wraps. It has like a 90 degree, and it actually wraps around this pillar. It comes up, and then there's like that. You'll see that 45 degree support. Well, that's actually part of the hinge. So this took a while to get this right. The real trick is where this hole is. If you can just see, I covered the other hole with weld. I was off. I had to move it out, and I had to actually extend this piece to accommodate moving this hole out because I needed clearances for the bolt that comes through there. Okay, so I ended up making a mock kind of window frame so I could get an idea of how this hinge, this bracket here, is going to interface with the actual hinge bracket. Kind of working out where the holes need to be so there's enough clearances and everything can function. It needs to be able to spin, flip forward when the window folds down, and then fold back up. There's a pin down here that gets welded to the actual bracket. It's just a threaded pin, and this window swings down and hooks on it, and then there's a wing nut that you tighten down. So the actual look of the hinge needs to be adjusted a bit to make it look closer to the actual Kubel, but the way it functions I know where these holes need to be now, and I also have a better idea of what materials I need to order to fabricate the actual framework for the windshield. So of course last night I was rushing to try to finish the second hinge before dinner, and I had this triangular piece needs to get welded on, and lo and behold I welded it on backwards. So yeah, that's what happens when you start rushing stuff. I'm going to have to cut this off, probably make a new actual triangle, and then weld it on in the proper orientation. Yeah, things happen, no big deal. Okay, there's the driver's side hinge. Both hinges are finished. So now I got to move on, and I'm going to start working on this spare tire hub. Like I've shown in previous videos, I've got a pot that's going to get mounted in the center as the main hub. It's going to have 3 or 4 bolts affixed to it. That way you can bolt the spare tire onto it. And then there's these 4 kind of crossing spokes. I gotta make those. So talking about the window hinges, this is the pin that the hinge and the window frame pivot on, and it also serves as a mounting point for the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror goes through this hole, and then this hole, it has a bolt through it, and in the slot it'll clamp down and hold that rod that retains the mirror. I'm not sure how they attached it, but I'm having the guy add some threads, and I'll probably put like a lock nut on there. But those are basic dimensions that I came up with. So I just went down to a local machine shop guy, and he's going to work on those for me. And on the way back I stopped at the welding shop, and the guys there were cutting these patterns for me, so I just checked in. They were saying they're going to be done probably tomorrow or the next day, so hopefully they'll be ready soon and I can get these tow hooks welded on. So now that both hinges are done on the passenger driver side, I'm going to move on and finally start working on the spare tire hub. So we'll start working on that. Just trying to use the materials I have. I have to make, there's 4 kind of spokes or like a cross that comes out from the hub, and I've got this kind of material laying around. It's kind of a thin-walled galvanized square tubing. I'm just cutting that diagonally, and I'm getting, I actually thought I'd just get one piece, but they're actually pretty uniform in size, so I think I can use both of them. Just weld over these holes, and these will make the spokes. So there's the bolt pattern I'm going with on the hub. I'm just going to do 3 bolts. That should hold it no problem. Probably cut these down a little shorter, but I have to see how the 15-inch rims fit, so I'm going to leave them long for now. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull off the hood panel there and drill all the holes around the perimeter for the plug welds. There's also plug welds along the 2 center kind of cross members. I'm going to do that before I start actually welding the hub and the spokes on, because once that happens it's going to be it's going to get a lot heavier and harder to move around. Okay, so there's the hub for the spare tire. I actually ended up having to cut about 1.25 inches off of it just to lower it down, because I actually feel like the tire should probably rest on these support pieces. So right now with the tires I have, the tire kind of rests on this, and it's kind of just touching the top of the hub here where you bolt it down. So, and I've got this laid out pretty much right where I want it. You know, unfortunately, miscalculation and whatnot, the filler neck for the gas should actually be forward another 1 or 2 inches at least. So as it stands, I don't have a full 16 inches of clearance. So the windscreen is going to come down and it's going to actually cover part of this fill cap, unfortunately. But with my big tires, the 30.5-inch tires, I do have enough clearance just to come down. Now, looking at photos of Kubelwagens with spare tires, I think part of it is the diameter of the tire is slightly smaller, but there's definitely a little more distance from the nose to, you know, you got the nose and then the beginning of the tire. So just have to play around with that, get it lined up the best I can. So there's a shot with the spare tire. And like I said, it's very, very close if you look at it. And what I didn't realize is that line's actually the front, because this bends down. So I am going to go ahead and push it back probably an inch, just to get it away from the front, maybe half an inch. But you can see how the tire actually touches the support there. Okay, here's my roadkill style to-do list. The right inner tie rod, left outer tie rod. I have to make 2 little corner supports, kind of like brackets for the front fenders. The tow hooks, once they get done, I got to make a support for the front tow hooks, kind of work it into the framework up there, but then I got to weld the front and back tow hooks. The lower kind of nose panel, I still have to pattern that. That's kind of really the last piece of sheet metal work, aside from the doors. They come down a little lower on the list. There's latches for the engine lid and the trunk. I got to weld the hinges for the engine lid and the trunk, get those attached. I'm debating on whether or not I should do that after I paint, so we'll see. I need to build a mount or a receiver for the hitch. I've got a pintle hitch and I'm going to hook that up to the rear bumper, so I need to make something for that. I have to build the doors, front and back doors. They shouldn't be too hard. I got to make a framework at a 1-inch and then put a skin on it, do some bead rolling, and they shouldn't be too difficult. The latches for the doors can be the trickiest part. There's a set of little kind of brackets that go around the back of the vehicle that the canvas canopy gets strapped down to. I'm going to make those and weld that on. I want to get that done before painting. The hood, I worked on that, and today I got to mount it, obviously, weld it in place after I get the hub and the fill neck on there. Windshield frame, got to build that. It might be a little tricky. Got to source the glass, figure out what I'm going to do for a gasket. There's door trim that goes around and it needs to get welded. It's just like 1/4-inch flat stock that gets welded on to make kind of a little door trim. Paint the seats. I think I talked about that earlier. There's a kind of a fabric leather paint you can get. So I'm going to paint them either kind of a tan or a black, depending. Then the big job, painting, you know, priming, base coats. I'm going with Dunkelgelb. Bumper bars. There's a front and rear bumper bar that get tied into the tow hooks on the later model Kubels. I'm going to make those. I got to finish the engine. I got to install the carb. I might do the rear main seal. I think I'm going to pull off the clutch and replace the clutch before I install the engine. Headlights and taillights, I need to source those, and I might have to make brackets to mount them. Reinstall the fuel tank, install the dash, obviously install the engine that was up there, and wiring. I think wiring will be kind of one of the last things I do. So I'm sure there's other things on the list, but that's generally what I need to get done. hopefully by the end of July, because there's a car show that I'd like to go to. But worst case scenario, I've got a reenactment event in September, so that's when I really want to have it done by. So I had to move the Kubel out into the shed because I've got some work to do on another vehicle. Can't spend all my time working on the Kubelwagen. I got to put that GMC Sierra in the garage and do a bunch of work to get it safety, get it on the road. So I'm just going to wrap this video up here. Any questions, comments about the Kubelwagen, leave them below. As always, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.